Captain Glip Globber's favorite thing about the Star Ark was the smell, or more accurately, the lack of it. Starships had a tendency to get personal with your olfactory senses, especially the ones ferrying exotic beasts from one quadrant of the galaxy to another. Yet somehow, the Star Ark managed to maintain an ambience of sterile indifference, like the universe's most apathetic hospital. "Captain, if I have to clean up one more pile of alien dung today, I swear I'm quitting," grumbled Threx, the ship's engineer, looking like he'd rather be swallowed by a black hole than deal with another round of interspecies housekeeping. "Threx, you've been threatening to quit since you joined this merry band of misfits," Glip replied, reclining in his command chair, which was less a throne of authority and more a slightly more comfortable toilet seat. "Yeah, but this time I mean it. I just stepped on something that growled at me. Sounds like a personal problem." "Get Jasper to help, he loves that stuff." Jasper's busy negotiating a treaty between the feces of the Glomf and the Creech. "It's a diplomatic mission, right, because the shit politics of the galaxy are the real reason we're out here," Glip chuckled. This was life aboard the Star Ark, a chaotic blend of sarcasm, zoology, and questionable decisions. The ship was a floating interstellar zoo, home to creatures that were either too dangerous to keep on planets or too valuable, and too weird to be left in the wild. And Glip, for better or worse, was the ringleader. "Captain, we've got an incoming transmission," came the voice of Lena, the ship's communications officer. She was perpetually unimpressed, a trait that Glip found both refreshing and slightly intimidating. "Put it through." "I could use a distraction from all the." Glip gestured vaguely at the monitors displaying various critical failures and systems on the verge of collapse. "This." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face that looked like it had lost a fistfight with a blender. The Oracle of Nyx, mystic, seer, and perennial oversharer of doom-laden prophecies. "Captain Glip Globber of the Star Ark," the Oracle intoned, voice crackling with interference and self-importance. "I bear tidings most dire. Oracle, lovely to see you again. How's the weather on Nyx? Still end of the world? Why, you jest in the face of peril, but heed my words. A rogue planet hurtles through the void, its path set to intersect with yours. Destruction is nigh, right? And what exactly is the going rate on nigh these days?" Glip leaned back, smirking. The Oracle's face twisted, apparently unsure whether to express frustration or indigestion. "In 9 cycles of your ship's clock it shall arrive, bringing with it ruin and chaos." "Oh, only 9 cycles. Guess I'll reschedule my afternoon nap then. Dismiss my warning at your peril, Captain. The creatures aboard your vessel may hold the key to salvation." "That's reassuring, considering one of them tried to eat my arm last Tuesday." With a final, dramatic flourish, the Oracle's image dissolved into static, leaving Glip with an empty screen, and a crew looking at him like he just ordered them to polish the ship's exterior by hand. "Well, that was cheerful," Lena remarked, rolling her eyes. "Do we believe any of it, the Oracle?" "Nah, he's just a drama queen with delusions of cosmic grandeur," Glip said, waving a hand dismissively. "Still, might want to have a peek at the star charts, see if anything's actually headed our way. Can't hurt to pretend we care." Threx, still nursing his grievances with the universe, chimed in. "You know, someday he might be right. And then we'll all look real stupid. Threx, if that day comes, I promise you can say I told you so all the way to oblivion." The crew was a motley collection of the galaxy's finest rejects, handpicked not for their skills, but for their willingness to tolerate Captain Glip's unique brand of leadership. And while the Oracle's warning was probably just another cosmic prank call, there was an unspoken understanding. Everyone liked the Star Ark as much as you could like a rust bucket with a penchant for needing constant maintenance and a cargo hold full of creatures that wanted to eat you. It was home. "Lena, see if you can confirm any rogue celestial objects nearby." "Threx, keep the power running and the cleanup crews, well, cleaning." "I'll be in my quarters pretending I know what I'm doing," Glip ordered, pushing himself up from his chair. "And if the planet's real, Lena asked, her skepticism barely veiled. Glip shrugged. We'll cross that collapsing bridge when we come to it. Back in his quarters, which were slightly less cramped than a coffin, Glip pondered the nature of prophecy. He was not a man given to flights of mystical fancy, but the oracle had a way of getting under your skin, like a particularly persistent rash. He activated his terminal, bringing up the latest scans of the surrounding space. Maybe the oracle's message was just another cosmic prank, or maybe he'd finally gotten something right. Either way, Glip had time to kill, and a universe of weirdness to manage until then. Commander Zog's report says the cephaloids are acting up again, came a voice from the intercom. It was Lena, no doubt, with more delightful news. Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be? What's the issue this time? They've requested more water in their habitat. Apparently it's getting dry in there. Dry. We're floating through space. How much wetter do they need it? Tell Zog to give them what they want. Last thing we need is a tank full of angry cephaloids. Those tentacles can really ruin your day if they're pissed. Already done, Captain. By the way, remember our little rogue planet problem? I ran the scans. Turns out there's something out there. Glip paused, fingers hovering over his terminal. Oh joy. Do tell. It's big, it's ugly, and it's definitely on a collision course with us. Just like the oracle said. Well, fortune does favor the bold or the incredibly unlucky. Have you had a chance to figure out what we're dealing with? Not yet, but I'll keep you posted. In the meantime, maybe we should start thinking about a plan. A plan, huh? I suppose our usual strategy of ignoring the problem and hoping it goes away won't work this time. Probably not, Captain. Unless you've got a magic wand hidden in your sock drawer. Damn. Worth checking, though. Fine, get the crew together. We'd better start figuring out how to not get squashed by a rogue planet. With a sigh, Glip got up and headed towards the bridge. He found his crew assembled, each looking like they'd rather be anywhere else but here. All right, so as it turns out, our dear friend the Oracle wasn't completely full of it. We've got a planet-sized problem heading our way. Suggestions? Threx raised a hand, though if it was to suggest something or simply to shield his eyes from the glaring lights was unclear. We could blow it up, sure, Threx, and while we're at it, why don't we just invent warp drive in the next 5 minutes? Hey, you asked for suggestions, not practical ones, true. Anyone got practical solutions then? Glip asked, scanning the room. Lena leaned forward, looking every bit the harbinger of common sense. We could divert some of the ship's energy to boost the engines, try to get us out of its path. And by some of the ship's energy, you mean all of it? Glip countered. Pretty much, yeah. Well, seems like we've got a real buffet of options here, haven't we? Glip sighed. All right, let's prep to boost the engines, but keep a backup plan ready. Like praying to whatever deities are out there. The crew dispersed, each one a mix of nervous anticipation and resignation. There was something oddly comforting about facing certain doom with a gang of similarly ill-prepared misfits. As the ship's systems began to whir into action, Glip took a moment to admire the view from the bridge. Space was vast and uncaring, much like a bureaucrat's heart. And yet here they were, a tiny speck of madness hurtling through the void. Lena, patch me through to the Oracle, Glip said, deciding that if they were going to face disaster, they might as well do it with all the information they could get. The Oracle's face reappeared on the screen, looking as insufferable as ever. Captain Glip Globber, have you finally seen the light? More like the looming shadow of an impending planetary collision, but sure, let's call it light, Glip replied. Perhaps now you understand the gravity of the situation. Cut the wordplay, Oracle, and just tell me if there's anything else we should know about this planet of yours. The Oracle paused, as if savoring the moment. It is said that a creature aboard your vessel holds the power to avert this catastrophe. Of course it does. Because why wouldn't it? Care to narrow that down for us, or should we just start asking each one if they've got an affinity for stopping planets? That, Captain, is for you to discover. As the transmission ended, Glip shook his head. Mystics and their cryptic nonsense. Still, it wouldn't hurt to have a chat with the more exotic inhabitants of the Star Ark. All right, folks. Looks like we've got a mystery to solve. Let's start by interrogating our guests. Maybe one of them's got a hidden talent for planetary deflection, Glip announced, not quite believing his luck or lack thereof. Great, Threx muttered. Next thing you know, one of them will claim they can smell what planets are thinking. If only it were that simple, Threx. If only it were that simple, as the crew set about the unenviable task of interviewing their captive audience of alien creatures. Glip couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Here they were, a gang of misfit zookeepers, trying to save their ship from a rogue planet, one sarcastic quip at a time. Some days it just didn't pay to get out of bed. And yet, as the star arc hummed with life and impending doom, Glip sensed a strange, reluctant thrill. After all, what was a little apocalypse between friends? As Captain Glip Globber watched the blurry stars streak by on the star arc's monitor, he couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was having a laugh at their expense. Sure, navigating through the cosmos with a bunch of wild beasts was no picnic, but getting smacked by a rogue planet named Doomulus, that was taking the piss. The ship's engine room was a symphony of groaning metal and hissing steam, a testament to Threx's engineering skills, or lack thereof, depending on how charitable you were feeling. The engineer himself was elbow-deep in some contraption that looked like it belonged in a scrapyard. "Threx, how's the engine looking? Think we can outrun Doomulus? Or should I start printing 'I survived the apocalypse' t-shirts?" Glip's voice crackled over the intercom. Threx wiped a greasy hand across his brow, leaving a streak that made him look like he'd lost a fight with an oil slick. "Captain, I'm not a miracle worker. I'm barely a functioning adult, but I'll do my best to squeeze some extra speed out of this heap." "I knew I could count on you," Glip replied, entirely uncertain about whose optimism he was trying to bolster. Meanwhile, in the communications room, Lena was wading through ancient alien texts like they were her personal hell. The Oracle's cryptic warnings had led her down a rabbit hole of prophecies, each one gloomier than the last. The aliens from long-forgotten civilizations seemed to have had a real flair for doomsday scenarios, if nothing else. Lena squinted at the screen, her eyes flicking over the alien script with the enthusiasm of someone deciphering tax forms. "Glip, I've got some bad news and some really bad news." "Which do you want first? Surprise me," Glip responded, already regretting he asked. "All right, bad news. Doomulus isn't just a rogue planet. According to these delightful bedtime stories, it's a harbinger of the end times. Ancient cultures called it the Great Splat." "Lovely. What's the really bad news then?" The text suggests it has some kind of gravitational effect, like a cosmic vacuum cleaner. "Anything nearby gets sucked in and smashed to bits." "Fantastic," Glip sighed, rubbing his temples. "Anything about how to stop it? Unless one of our passengers is secretly a godlike entity in disguise, not really. But there's a lot of talk about a chosen one and unlocking potential, probably all nonsense." "Probably," Glip echoed, though he couldn't help but wonder. "Keep digging. If you find anything useful, let me know. Also, if you find any winning lottery numbers, I'll take those too." As Lena returned to her research, Jasper, the crew member with the unenviable task of negotiating interspecies fecal treaties, wandered into the mess hall where Glip was nursing a cup of something that might have once been coffee. "Jasper, anything to report?" "Or are the intergalactic poop talks going smoothly?" Glip asked. Jasper collapsed into a chair with the weariness of someone who'd been bartering with creatures known for using their excrement as both currency and weaponry. "Never smooth, Captain. But on the bright side, the Ultrachian dung bats have agreed to keep their expulsions to a minimum." "Something about sensing cosmic turbulence." "Ah, yes, because nothing signals impending doom quite like constipated bat things." Jasper chuckled, despite himself. "Also, had a chat with Zog. The cephaloids are still whining about their water levels. They are convinced we're trying to desiccate them. Let them know we'll add more water once we figure out how not to become space pancakes." "Priorities, right. Of course, Captain," Jasper said, standing up. "I'll get back to keeping the peace among our charming zoo inmates." Later, the Star Arc's bridge buzzed with tension and sarcastic banter as the crew reconvened. Each member wore the kind of expression that said they were either about to save the universe or die trying, and weren't entirely thrilled with either option. "All right, team," Glip began, looking around at his ragtag group of misfits. "I assume everyone's heard about Doomulus and Lena's prophecies of doom," a collective nod accompanied by a few eye rolls. "Great. So, Lena, any updates from our ancient alien pen pals?" Lena tapped her terminal, projecting a hologram of indecipherable symbols. "Just more gibberish about unlocking potential in something called the Celestial Key, and of course, the ever-encouraging prediction of inevitable demise." "Comforting," Glip commented dryly. "Threx, how's the engine boost coming along?" Threx grimaced, which on him looked like just another day at the office. "We're about half an hour from full power. If Doomulus decides to show up early, though, we're screwed." "Noted." "Okay, then. Our best bet is still figuring out what these prophecies mean. Anyone up for a crash course in ancient alien linguistics?" The room was silent, the kind of silence you only get when everyone agrees they'd rather take their chances with the rogue planet. "Thought so," Glip sighed. "All right, let's keep poking at this mystery." Somewhere between the Chosen One, unlocking potential, and the Celestial Key, there's got to be a way to not get squashed. As the crew dispersed, each to their respective tasks of keeping both ship and sanity intact, Glip lingered on the bridge. The view outside was as serene as ever, the stars a million tiny specks against the black canvas of space. It was almost enough to make you forget about the massive hunk of doom barreling toward you. Almost. The Oracle's words nagged at him like an itch you couldn't quite scratch. "A creature aboard your vessel holds the power," he'd said. But which creature and what power? And could they figure it out before Doomulus turned them into space debris? With a sigh, Glip returned to his quarters. He activated his terminal, bringing up a list of the most peculiar creatures on board. If there was a solution to be found among the bizarre array of aliens they were transporting, he'd find it. He had to. After all, if they didn't solve this puzzle, there wouldn't be anyone left to tell the tale or clean up the mess. As the hours ticked by and the engine worked relentlessly to prepare for maximum speed, the crew engaged in their own private battles with impending doom. Threx was elbow-deep in an antique of an engine, swearing at it in a dialect of curses only comprehensible to those who'd spent too many cycles fixing other people's problems. Every nut, bolt, and wire seemed to taunt him with the possibility of failure, but Threx wasn't about to let a rogue planet get the better of him, or by extension, the captain he both loved and loathed. Meanwhile, back in the communications room, Lena was deciphering yet another alien text, this one promising to unlock the secrets of the universe or, more likely, a headache. Her fingers danced over the controls, navigating through files with the practiced ease of someone who'd been doing this way too long. Glip, on the other hand, was busy not being busy. Captain's privilege, he'd call it. Sitting in his quarters, he mused over the crew's predicament, wondering if perhaps they were all just part of some cosmic joke. If they survived, he'd have to have a word with the universe about its sense of humor. The intercom buzzed to life, jolting him from his reverie. "Captain, we've got incoming," Lena's voice crackled. "It's the Oracle again." "Great, just what we needed." "More philosophical mumbo-jumbo," Glip muttered, dragging himself to the bridge. The Oracle appeared on the screen, more smug than he had any right to be. "Captain Glip Globber, I see you have not been crushed yet. An oversight that will soon be corrected if you do not act. Look, mate, if you're here to tell us something useful, go ahead. Otherwise, I've got a date with a rogue planet and I'd rather not be late." "Very well, Captain. The Celestial Key is the answer, as I've mentioned, but it must be activated. And how do we do that? Plug it in." "Give it a good talking to." The Oracle's expression softened, as if dealing with a particularly slow learner. "The key is a living thing, Captain. One of your passengers. It must be awakened to its true potential." "Awakened. Right. And do we ask it nicely, or is there some secret handshake involved?" "Search your cargo, Captain." You will know it when you see it." With that, the oracle's visage flickered and disappeared, leaving Glip to stew in frustration. "Fantastic," he groaned, turning to his crew. "Looks like we're hunting for a magical space creature. Everyone ready for a little hide-and-seek with the fate of the galaxy at stake." The crew's collective groan was answer enough. They split up, spreading out over the ship to interrogate the menagerie of bizarre and often irritable aliens on board. Glip found himself face to face with a particularly moody Yultrachian dungbat, its eyes studying him with a mix of disdain and mild curiosity. "So, any chance you're secretly the key to saving us from Doomulus?" the creature chirped, a sound eerily reminiscent of a laugh. "No, didn't think so." "Thanks for your time, though." Moving on, Glip checked in with the cephaloids, who were now swimming contentedly in their freshly topped-up tank. "Look, I know you're not fans of the dry life, but any chance one of you is the celestial key?" The response was a cacophony of bubbles and tentacles, which Glip took as a firm no. With every dead end, Glip's frustration grew. The oracle's cryptic clues were wearing thin, and the clock was ticking. Doomulus was a problem they couldn't ignore, and the solution seemed as elusive as ever. Finally, with time running out and options dwindling, Glip stumbled upon a creature he'd almost forgotten about. A small, unassuming alien called a Ziglarian Whisperer. It sat quietly in its enclosure, its eyes gleaming with a wisdom that seemed out of place on such a small being. "All right, little guy, care to shed some light on this mess? Are you the celestial key the oracle keeps yammering on about?" The creature tilted its head, and for a moment Glip thought it might actually respond. Then, with a surprising amount of dignity for something that looked like a cross between a rat and a ball of lint, it spoke. "I am not the key, but I can show you where it lies." Glip blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the tiny voice. "You can talk, only when necessary," the whisperer replied. "And you know where the key is." "Yes, but you must act swiftly. Doomulus approaches." "Right." "Lead the way," Glip urged, the urgency of the situation snapping him back to focus. Guided by the whisperer, Glip and the crew navigated through the ship, each step bringing them closer to an answer, or at least he hoped so. The sense of impending doom hung heavy over them, a constant reminder that time was running out. Finally, they reached a section of the cargo hold that rarely saw visitors. In the corner was a creature unlike any other, its form shimmering with an ethereal glow. It was the celestial key, slumbering, waiting to be awoken. "Now what?" Lena asked, skepticism still threaded through her voice. "Now we hope this thing knows how to stop a planet," Glip replied, more to himself than to anyone else. "Wake it up and let's see if we can convince it to save our asses." As they worked to awaken the creature, Glip couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. Here they were, a crew of misfits and outcasts, facing down a rogue planet with nothing but sarcasm and a prayer. And yet, somehow, he believed they'd pull through. After all, if the universe was going to send them to their doom, it would at least have the decency to let them enjoy the ride. Captain Glip Globber stood on the bridge of the Star Ark, squinting at the monitor like it was a particularly confusing crossword puzzle. The rogue planet, Doomulus, was doing its best impression of a cosmic heat-seeking missile, barreling toward them with all the subtlety of a drunk asteroid. "Well, isn't this just the universe giving us the middle finger?" Glip muttered. Threx, who'd finally managed to extract himself from the bowels of the engine room, leaned over his shoulder. "Looks like Doomulus has a crush on us, and not the good kind." Lena, having finally deciphered enough ancient gibberish to make her head spin, piped up from the corner. "You think it's possible the planet's just, following its instincts, like a lost pet, right?" Jasper snorted, sauntering in with his usual swagger. "A lost pet the size of a continent on steroids. What do we do, Glip? Throw it a cosmic bone?" Glip scratched his chin, considering their options or lack thereof. "Well, we've got two choices. 1, we figure out how to change its path. 2, we get real good at dodging. Option 3, Threx said, we throw a party and invite Doomulus over for cake. Maybe it'll change its mind." Optimistic as always, Glip shot back. But let's not plan the welcome parade just yet. The crew gathered around, a mix of misfit and miracle workers, each with a look on their faces that said they were as ready for a miracle as the captain was. "So evacuate the zoo or try to knock the planet off course?" Lena asked. "Yeah, evacuate," Threx snorted. "And where would we send our delightful menagerie? Sorry folks, no refunds on the space zoo, but here's a coupon for your next apocalypse." Jasper scratched the back of his neck. What if Dumulus is attracted to the creatures? Maybe it's some weird cosmic mating ritual. Great, Glip sighed. We're on a honeymoon cruise for a psychotic planet. Just what I needed. The ship shuddered, a not-so-gentle reminder that Dumulus didn't intend to send a save-the-date. It was coming, and fast. Glip paced back and forth, the kind of walking that only really accomplished wearing a hole in the floor. We need to figure out which of these creatures might be the reason it's stalking us. The Oracle hinted one was the key, right? Perhaps the key to making Dumulus back off. Threx grunted, arms crossed. And just how are we supposed to play interstellar matchmaker? We've got about as much chance finding that out as Threx has of winning a beauty pageant, Lena quipped. Hey, Threx protested. I'm plenty beautiful, thank you very much. Glip waved them both off. Focus, people. Lena, keep digging through those texts. Maybe there's something we missed. Threx, see if you can boost the engines any further. Jasper, try communicating with the creatures. Maybe one of them knows something we don't. You mean like, hey, Dumulus, it's not you, it's me? Jasper asked, eyebrows raised. Exactly, Glip said. Only less pathetic. The crew split up, each to their respective tasks, the weight of impending doom settling like a cloud of bad gas over the ship. Lena buried herself in alien texts, her eyes glazing over words that seemed to blur into one giant, indecipherable mess. Threx trudged back to the engine room, muttering about the joys of mechanical purgatory. As he tinkered and cursed, he couldn't help but feel like he was rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, or whatever spacefaring equivalent that entailed. Jasper, meanwhile, found himself back in the company of the Ziglarian Whisperer. Any chance you know how to tell a rogue planet thanks but no thanks? The Whisperer blinked, looking contemplative. Planets do not listen, they act on instinct. To deter it, one must find what it seeks. Great, Jasper sighed. So we need a cosmic dog whistle. Or, the Whisperer continued, awaken what it fears. Jasper narrowed his eyes. And what does Dumulus fear? The unknown, the Whisperer replied, almost cryptically. Helpful, Jasper muttered, stalking off to relay the non-news to Glip. As he explained the Whisperer's vague advice, Glip rubbed his temples. So we find something it doesn't understand and hope it scares the planet off. This day just keeps getting better. Could be worse, Threx chimed in over the intercom. Could be raining, Jasper snorted. In space, genius. It's the thought that counts, Threx replied, deadpan as usual. With Dumulus closing in and their options as limited as a snowball in a supernova, the crew was at the end of their proverbial rope. Glip called them all back to the bridge, the tension palpable enough to cut with a laser scalpel. All right, team, Glip began, the weight of responsibility heavy on his words. We're up against a planet that thinks we're the latest trend in the cosmic buffet. Let's see if we can't show it why we're more trouble than we're worth. Sounds like a plan, Lena said, sarcasm dripping from her voice. A terrible, terrible plan. Glip cracked a weary smile. But it's our terrible plan. They dispersed once more, determination etched into their expressions. As they worked, they could almost hear the ticking of a cosmic clock counting down to their doom. Threx pushed the engines to their limits, coaxing every ounce of power from the ancient machinery. Lena furiously cross-referenced texts, her frustration mounting with each dead end. Jasper wandered among the creatures, searching for something, anything, that might be their savior. As the Iors wore on, the ship's hum became a comforting lullaby, a steady, rhythmic reminder that despite the chaos, they were still afloat, barely. Captain, Lena's voice crackled over the intercom, I think I found something. Glip hurried to the communications room, where Lena was pointing at an ancient script, her eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. It talks about a creature, one that holds the power to repel the planet. It's not very clear, but it mentions a song. A song, Glip repeated, skepticism evident. Yeah, sing to the planet or something, Lena shrugged. I've heard worse ideas. Threx's voice came through the speakers. You want to sing to a planet? I didn't know you were that desperate. Glip shot him a look through the nearest camera. Desperate times, Threx. We've tried everything else. Jasper wandered in, catching the tail end of the conversation. If we're forming a band, I call lead vocals. Sure, and I'll be the backup dancer, Lena snorted. With a collective sigh, they gathered around the creature they believed might be their last hope, the celestial key still shimmering with a subtle glow. All right, Glip said, let's give this a shot. Everyone ready? A chorus of nods, grunts, and sarcastic affirmations filled the room. They worked together, muddling through the instructions Lena had deciphered, their movements a blend of hope and hopelessness. As they coaxed the creature into revealing its hidden talent, the Star Ark shuddered, the proximity of Dumulus felt in every nerve of the ship. Then, slowly at first, a melody began to fill the air, a haunting, ethereal tune that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of space. The creature sang, its voice a strange, beautiful thing that echoed through the halls and the hearts of everyone aboard. Glip held his breath, waiting for some sign, some miracle that their efforts weren't in vain. And then, just as they thought all was lost, Dumulus shifted. A slight, almost imperceptible change in its course, but enough to spur a collective gasp of disbelief. Holy hell, Threx breathed. It's working. Lena grinned, relief washing over her. I can't believe it. Jasper was already dancing a jig, his earlier bravado replaced with genuine joy. We did it. We actually did it. Glip allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. Looks like we're not on the menu today. As the crew basked in their unexpected success, the ship hummed with a new energy, a sense of camaraderie and absurdity that only comes from facing death and living to tell the tale. So, Glip said, turning to his crew, who wants to stick around for the encore? They laughed, a sound that echoed through the corridors, mingling with the creature's song as Dumulus slowly faded from their screens. The galaxy was wide, their path uncertain, but for now they were alive, and that was enough. For the crew of the Star Ark, the universe was still a place of wonder and terror, but they'd learned one thing for certain. No matter how dark the skies, they'd face them together, with sarcasm, snark, and a hell of a lot of stubbornness. The Star Ark cruised through the void, a stubborn tin against the cosmic madness looming around it. Captain Glip Globber sat in the command chair, staring into the abyss, which, as usual, didn't have much to say back except for a flicker of stars and doom. The successful serenade to Dumulus had bought them some time, but in the universe's infinite wisdom, it had decided to throw them another curveball. Because why settle for one disaster when you could have doubled the fun? Captain, you're going to want to see this, came Threx's voice over the intercom, tinged with a mixture of amusement and dread, which was pretty much his constant state of being. Glip sighed. He was getting real tired of sentences that started with "you're going to want to see this." They never ended with a surprise pizza delivery or galactic peace treaty. No, it was always something uniquely catastrophic, like an unexpected tax audit from the universe. He ambled over to the main monitor where the rest of the crew was gathering, drawn by the gravitational pull of impending doom. The monitor flickered before revealing a mesmerizing light show that made Glip's jaw tighten. What fresh hell is this? Lena asked, peering at the screen like it owed her money. Looks like a cosmic rave, Threx replied, leaning against a console. Except no one's having fun and the drinks are overpriced. Jasper, arms folded, squinted at the swirling lights. Are we sure it's not just another attempt by Dumulus to flash its high beams at us? Lena rolled her eyes. If Dumulus had a love language, it'd definitely be acts of service. By which I mean it serves up destruction. Glip shook his head, focusing on the data trickling in. It's a spatial anomaly. Distortions in space-time. It's like the universe's answer to a midlife crisis. And we're headed straight for it. Another day, another existential threat, Jasper quipped. Be honest, Glip, you're just in it for the adrenaline rush. I'm more of a don't die horribly kind of guy, Glip shot back, rubbing his temples. We need to find a way around these anomalies. Suggestions, reverse and floor it, Threx said, half joking. Mostly. Sure, if we wanted to see what happens when a ship tries to moonwalk through space, Lena replied. Jasper snapped his fingers. Couldn't we just charm it with another song? Worked last time, didn't it? Unless you've got a tune specifically for spatial distortions in D minor, I'm open to actual suggestions, Glip said, exasperation tugging at the edges of his patience. Lena brightened, a rare occurrence. There's a reference in the text to these anomalies. They're called the weeping folds. Supposedly, they respond unpredictably to mass and energy. We might be able to use that against them. Great, Threx said, so we just need to find the right balance between mass and energy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, more like difficult, lemon difficult, Jasper added, smirking. Glip thought for a moment, chewing on the inside of his cheek. All right, team, we need to run some calculations. Lena, dive into those texts. Threx, see if you can modify the energy output of our engines. Jasper, keep the creatures calm. Last thing we need is a stampede of exotic beasts, because nothing screams we're screwed like a herd of interstellar buffalo going berserk, Jasper said, heading off to corral the ship's menagerie. As they got to work, Glip felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The kind of weight that usually meant he'd have a nice collection of ulcers by the time this was all over. If they survived, that was. But hey, one problem at a time. Hours passed, each tick of the clock a reminder of the relentless march towards catastrophe. Lena pored over ancient scripts, her eyes bloodshot and her patience threadbare. Threx grumbled to himself, deep in the bowels of the ship, tinkering with machinery older than some of the stars they passed. Jasper meanwhile wandered through the exotic creatures, offering soothing words and the occasional snack. Don't worry, pals, he said to a particularly disgruntled-looking six-eyed feline. We're just dealing with a little cosmic indigestion. Happens to everyone. The ship's hum was punctuated by odd noises, the kind that usually heralded trouble. But having no choice, the crew pushed on, fueled by caffeine, desperation, and a healthy dose of gallows humor. Eventually, Glip called them back to the bridge, the impending anomaly now visible on all screens, a twisting, churning mass of space that seemed to yawn hungrily in their direction. Well, folks, this is it, Glip said, trying to inject a bit of confidence into his voice. He mostly succeeded, sounding less like a captain and more like a game show host introducing the lightning round. Threx folded his arms. So are we going to waltz through that thing, or do we have a plan? We have a plan, Glip replied. A terrible, risky, probably won't work kind of plan. Just how I like him, Jasper said, flashing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Lena stepped forward, pointing at the monitor. By varying our mass and energy output, we might be able to slip through the gaps in the distortions. It's like threading a needle with a freight train. I'm all for needlepoint, Threx said, but this is more like trying to juggle chainsaws while blindfolded. Optimism, Threx, Jasper chuckled. Remember, it's all about mindset. Yeah, well, my mindset is don't get turned into space confetti, Threx replied. Glip clapped his hands, drawing their attention. All right, let's do this. Lena, guide us through the calculations. Threx, I'll need you on the engines. Jasper, keep an eye on the creatures. They might sense the distortions and panic. With roles assigned and a loose plan in place, the crew went to work, the Star Ark groaning in protest as they adjusted its systems. The ship shivered as they approached the anomaly, the distortions creeping around them like the universe's worst hug. All right, folks, hold on to your butts, Glip announced. This is going to be one hell of a ride. As they plunged into the anomaly, the ship lurched violently, a cacophony of alarms screaming in protest. The crew were thrown against their seats, the force of the anomaly threatening to tear them apart. Steady, steady, Glip muttered to himself, guiding the ship with a deft hand. The controls vibrated under his grip, the feedback a jarring symphony of chaos. Outside, the distortion swirled like a hurricane, space bending and folding in ways that defied logic and physics. The ship's systems flickered, struggling to keep up with the immense pressure. Engines overheating. Threx shouted over the din, his fingers dancing across the controls as he fought to keep them stable. "Just a little longer," Lena said, her eyes fixed on the data streaming past her screen. "We're almost through." The ship shuddered again, a low groan echoing through its frame as if it were a sentient being in pain. Glip gritted his teeth, refusing to give in to the mounting fear clawing at his gut. "We're not dying today," he promised, though whether to his crew or himself, he couldn't say. Finally, with a last desperate push, they broke free of the distortion's grip, the ship tumbling into open space with a grace that was more accident than design. "Holy crap, we made it," Jasper breathed, slumping back in his chair, sweat beading on his brow. "Yeah," Glip said, his voice hoarse but triumphant. "We're clear." The crew let out a collective sigh of relief, exhaustion settling over them like a thick fog. They'd faced the anomaly and come out the other side, battered but alive. "Nice driving, Captain," Threx said, offering a rare compliment. "Though next time maybe we take the scenic route." "I'll pencil that in," Glip replied, a weary smile tugging at his lips. Lena stretched, rolling her shoulders. "You know, I think I'm getting used to this whole imminent death thing." Jasper chuckled. Just another day in paradise. As they settled back into their routines, the ship's systems slowly returning to normal, Glip allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. They'd overcome another hurdle, but he knew there were more challenges ahead. Dumulus was still out there, and the galaxy wasn't about to give them a break anytime soon. But for now, they were alive, and that was enough. For now, they had each other, sarcasm and all. And maybe, just maybe, that was the true strength of the Star Arc. Not its engines or its hull, but the crew who refused to give up, no matter the odds. "All right, everyone," Glip said, standing up from his chair. "Let's get back to work. We've got a zoo to run, and I think we owe it to our passengers to keep them off the menu." The crew nodded, a renewed sense of purpose in their eyes. They'd faced the darkness and come out the other side, and they'd do it again if they had to. Because, in the end, they were the Star Arc, and they weren't going down without a fight. As they busied themselves with their tasks, the ship sailed on through the void, a small, stubborn beacon of life in a universe that seemed determined to snuff it out. But as long as they had each other, as long as they had their humor and their resilience, they'd keep flying. And who knows? Maybe someday they'd even get that pizza delivery. The Star Arc plowed through the cosmos like a tin can in a tornado, its hull groaning with every twist and bend of the universe's latest party trick. The crew had barely caught their breath from the last cosmic joyride before the next disaster made its grand entrance, Dumulus, the rogue planet with the worst reputation since Pluto got demoted. Captain Glip Globber squinted at the data readouts, which were painting a rather unflattering picture of their situation. "Looks like Dumulus is putting the pedal to the metal," he said, shaking his head. "Best case scenario, we get a good view of our own funeral." Threx, elbow deep in engine grease, grunted from his corner of the engine room. "Fantastic. I always wanted to be remembered as the guy who got run over by a planet." Jasper strolled in, tossing a half-eaten protein bar into the air and catching it with a flourish. "Maybe Dumulus just wants to drop by for a chat. You know, shoot the asteroid, exchange baking recipes." "Sure, Jasper," Lena chimed in, not looking up from her screen. "And maybe it'll invite us over for a nice cup of oblivion tea." Glip sighed, rubbing his temples in a futile attempt to massage away the headache that had taken up residence. "We need to figure out how to communicate with that thing. If the ancient texts are right, Dumulus has a mind of its own. Let's hope it's not in a bad mood, or at least not a worse mood than usual," Threx added, fiddling with a panel that sparked in protest. The ship's monitor flickered, displaying Dumulus's trajectory, a direct line to their current location, like a cosmic hitman with their coordinates on speed dial. The crew felt the weight of impending doom settle over them, a familiar yet unwelcome guest. "Well, at least the zoo's not panicking yet," Jasper said, pausing as a distant roar echoed through the ship. "Spoke too soon. Sounds like the snake bear's having a meltdown. That's all we need," Glip muttered. "All right, team, let's get our act together. Lena, see if you can find anything in those scripts about negotiating with deranged planets. Jasper, keep the creatures calm. Try not to get eaten. Don't have to tell me twice," Jasper said, heading off with a jaunty wave that belied the tension in his shoulders. Threx wiped his hands on a rag, leaving stains that were as permanent as the universe's poor choices. "And what about me, Captain? Should I start building an escape pod out of duct tape in desperation? Tempting, but no," Glip replied, half smiling despite himself. "See if you can boost our comms. We need to make sure Doomulus can't ignore us." "Got it," Threx grunted, diving back into the machinery with all the enthusiasm of a man facing a firing squad. As they busied themselves with their tasks, the Star Ark shuddered, the vibrations setting off a cacophony of sounds from the menagerie. It was like a symphony composed by a madman, with every creature adding its own discordant note. Jasper made his way through the holding areas, soothing the beasts with a mixture of snacks and sweet talking that bordered on bribery. "Easy there, big fella," he murmured to a creature that looked like it was part rhino, part octopus. "We're all in this mess together." The creature snorted, eyeing Jasper with something that might have been gratitude or indigestion. It was hard to tell with alien wildlife. Back on the bridge, Lena was deep in her research, surrounded by digital screens filled with ancient texts and half-legible scribbles. According to this, Doomulus is supposed to be sentient. "Kind of like a cosmic toddler with a nuclear arsenal." "Perfect," Glip said dryly. "So we just need to figure out what it wants. Maybe offer it a juice box or a timeout," Lena suggested, scrolling through the data with a frown. "Problem is, there's no record of anyone actually talking to it. All the previous attempts ended with a lot of noise and a sudden lack of atmosphere." Glip's lips twitched in a humorless smile. "Well, we've always been pioneers of the doomed but defiant school of thought." Threx's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, I've boosted the comms as much as they'll go. If Doomulus doesn't pick up now, it's because it's screening our calls." "Great work, Threx." Glip nodded, more to himself than anyone else. "Let's give it a shot." He activated the communication system, the panel lighting up like the galaxy's most ominous Christmas tree. "This is Captain Glip Globber of the Star Ark, hailing the entity known as Doomulus. We request communication. Please respond." The silence that followed was thick enough to chew, the kind that usually came right before something exploded. The crew held their breath, collectively willing the rogue planet to acknowledge their plea. After what felt like an eternity, the monitor flickered, displaying patterns that danced and shifted in ways that defied easy interpretation. For a moment, Glip thought they'd succeeded in making contact. Then the patterns resolved into a bright, pulsing image that felt suspiciously like a middle finger. "Well, that's not ideal," Lena said, squinting at the screen. "I think it just told us where to shove our transmission. Planet's got attitude," Threx chuckled over the intercom. "Gotta respect that." Glip sighed, scratching his head. "All right, plan B. We need to figure out how to dodge this thing. It's accelerating and we're running out of time." Jasper returned, wiping a smudge of something unidentifiable from his cheek. Zeus quieted down for now. "I've got some good news and some bad news." "Hit me with the good news first," Glip said, bracing himself. "The good news is that the real volatile ones are napping. I think I might have accidentally invented a new sedation tactic, singing lullabies in the key of go to sleep or else. And the bad news? The bad news is that the snake bear seems to be allergic to the sound of my voice. It's found a new hobby in trying to claw through its enclosure." Glip grimaced. "Can you handle it?" "Only if I want to end up as dessert," Jasper replied. "But hey, I'm open to suggestions. Let's focus on not getting crushed first, Lena interjected, tapping through her notes. If we can't talk Dumulus down, we need to outmaneuver it. Problem is, the thing's faster than a caffeine-fueled squirt on a sugar high. Great analogy, Lena, Threx commented dryly. Really paints a picture. Lena shot him a look. Focus, Threx. We need a miracle here. I'm all out of miracles, Glip said, exasperation tinged with a hint of desperation. Let's try logic instead. What if we redirected its path somehow? Are you suggesting we play cosmic billiards with a rogue planet? Threx sounded incredulous, even through the static of the intercom. Why not? We've tried everything else, Glip shrugged. And besides, I'm not seeing anyone else lining up to save our skins. All right, let's say we go with your plan, Lena mused thoughtfully. How do we accomplish that without, getting squished like bugs on a windshield? Glip thought for a moment. We could deploy some of our cargo. Use the mass to alter its trajectory. At the very least, it might slow it down. Jasper's eyes went wide. You mean release the beasts? In space, do you have a better idea? Glip asked, arching an eyebrow. Jasper hesitated, then shook his head. Nope, just making sure we're on the same page of this mad journal. Threx's voice crackled through again. Captain, I can rig the cargo holds to open. If we time it right, the release might just give us the nudge we need. Do it, Glip ordered, determination hardening his expression. And let's hope those creatures can swim in the cosmic sea. As Threx worked on the release mechanisms, Lena continued her frantic search through the archives, hoping against hope to find something they'd missed. Jasper returned to the menagerie, readying the beasts for what was shaping up to be the universe's weirdest evacuation plan. Time ticked away, each second bringing Dumulus closer, its shadow looming large on the Ark's horizon. All right, folks, Glip said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Get ready to release the hounds or whatever the hell we have in there. Here goes nothing, Threx muttered, his fingers dancing over the controls. The cargo holds opened with a shuddering groan, the star Ark belching its exotic contents into the void. Creatures of all shapes and sizes floated free, bewildered but strangely majestic against the backdrop of stars. Good luck, you crazy space critters, Jasper whispered, watching them drift away. The effect was immediate. Dumulus hesitated, its path altering just enough to buy them precious seconds. It veered to avoid the creatures, creating a narrow window of escape. We've done it, Lena breathed, disbelief and relief mingling in her voice. For now, Glip cautioned, already plotting their next moves. We're not out of the woods yet, but at least we're not about to be planet-paced. The crew shared a moment of shaky triumph, the adrenaline of near disaster leaving them light-headed and giddy. And in that moment, even as the universe threw everything it had at them, they found the strength to smile. All right, let's get moving, Glip said, his tone a mix of authority and camaraderie. We've got a long way to go, and we're gonna need all the help we can get. As the star Ark turned its back on Dumulus, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last they'd see of the rogue planet. But for now, they'd won a small victory in a universe determined to knock them down. And really, wasn't that the best kind of victory? The kind that came with sarcasm, defiance, and just a little bit of hope. They'd take it. The star Ark drifted through space like a tin can tossed into a cosmic pond, Dumulus looming larger and more menacing by the second. It was a rogue planet with all the charm of a sledgehammer and the disposition to match. Captain Glip Globber stood on the bridge, staring at the monitor displaying Dumulus's trajectory, his brain churning through the possibilities like a hamster on a wheel with no exit strategy. We could try sending a polite letter next, Threx suggested over the intercom, his voice saturated with sarcasm. Dear Dumulus, please kindly screw off, yeah, because that worked so well the first time, Lena replied, rolling her eyes as she sifted through ancient mythological texts on her screen, trying to find anything that might give them an edge. Glip scratched his chin, eyes narrowing at the screen. All right, team, we need a plan that doesn't involve becoming planetary roadkill. And since Dumulus wants to play planetary bumper cars, We might as well use what we've got. Sure, because our stockpile of bizarre alien zoo creatures is exactly what NASA suggests for planetary defense. Jasper chimed in, leaning against the doorframe with an easy smile that belied the tension in the room. Exactly, Glip said, with a glint in his eye that hinted at either genius or madness. Think about it. Earth had myths about creatures moving mountains, parting seas, and generally mucking up physics as we know it. Why can't our bizarre menagerie do the same? Lena tapped her fingers on her console, considering. Well, there's the fact that we're not on Earth, and they don't have magic powers, details, Glip waved dismissively. Consider this. We have a snake bear that could probably shatter steel with its jaws. If we can redirect even a fraction of Dumulus's trajectory with a well-timed beastie buffet, we might buy ourselves enough time to get out of its path. Threx's chuckle was dry as space dust. And if that doesn't work, we can always adopt the fetal position and scream quietly. Exactly my backup plan, Glip nodded. But first, let's focus on Plan A. Jasper grinned, unable to resist. I always knew our menagerie would be useful in a galactic crisis. Start with the snake bear, I guess. No, Glip shook his head. Too cliched. We need to think outside the cage. What about releasing the squishes? Lena blinked in disbelief. The blob-like things that do nothing but jiggle. Exactly, Glip said. Think about it. They are essentially huge blobs of goo. If we release them in front of Dumulus, they could act as a buffer. Kind of like when you throw a water balloon to slow down a charging bull. Assuming the bull in question was made of rock and hell-bent on destruction, Threx deadpanned. Details, Glip repeated. But really, if we can create enough chaos, we might just be able to shift Dumulus's path enough to slip by. Jasper shrugged. I mean, it's not the worst idea we've had today. Let's get to it, Glip said. Jasper, you take the squishes. Threx, I want the engine room prepped for maximum thrust. Lena, keep digging for anything else that might help. And someone find out if any of the beasts have a secret talent for planetary defense. On it, Captain Dumulus Whisperer, Threx replied, his voice crackling away as he returned to his beloved engine room. Jasper and Glip made their way to the holding area where the squishes resided. They were mostly harmless, mostly useless, and mostly unimpressed with their current housing. Jasper opened the containment doors cautiously, peering inside at the quivering jelly masses that inhabited their enclosure. Hey there, buddies, Jasper cooed, treating them like prized show ponies. Fancy a little space walk, one of the squishes responded by wobbling enthusiastically, or maybe it was just a tremor. Hard to tell with blobs. All right, Glip said, rubbing his hands together. Let's get these guys suited up and ready for launch. The task of maneuvering the squishes was akin to herding wet noodles, each one slipping and sliding as they were guided towards the loading bay. Jasper took to the task with the resigned patience of a man who had long since accepted the absurdity of his life choices. I feel like I'm in some kind of nightmarish cooking show, Jasper commented, as one of the blobs made a bid for freedom, skidding across the floor and nearly flattening him. You signed up for this, remember? Glip grinned, corralling another squishy with a deft foot. Yeah, well, I didn't read the fine print about intergalactic roulette with rogue planets, Jasper grumbled, finally getting his batch of squishes into position. Back on the bridge, Lena had found something intriguing. Hey, Captain, I've got something. According to these records, Dumulus has a strange magnetic field. If we can disrupt it even slightly, it could react more to physical disturbances. Perfect, Glip said. Let's make sure the squishes are part of that disturbance. Threx, you copy loud and clear, Captain. Threx's voice crackled with a mixture of weariness and wry amusement. Engines are ready for full burn whenever you give the order. Let's just hope our gooey friends can do their part. Here's hoping, Glip replied, turning to Jasper. Ready, as I'll ever be, Jasper said, sealing the hatch on the squishy containment. With the squishes primed and ready to float into space, Glip and Jasper retreated to the bridge, the tension in the air as thick as an overcooked pudding. Let's launch, Glip commanded. The monitor showed Dumulus's unstoppable approach, its shadow growing darker and more oppressive with every passing second. Jasper, fingers poised over the controls, shot Glip a look that said, "Really? This is what we're doing," but he pressed the button anyway, releasing the squishes into space. The blobs floated out, a gelatinous battalion with all the ferocity of a damp sponge. Yet there they were, drifting towards Dumulus, the universe's most unconventional army. "Look at them go," Lena remarked, half in awe and half in disbelief. "It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, or a parade of cosmic jelly beans," Jasper added, unable to resist the quip. The squishes were surprisingly resilient, bobbing and bouncing as they collided with Dumulus's foreboding surface. The rogue planet rumbled, its path wavering ever so slightly, a subtle shift but enough to make Glip's heart leap with cautious optimism. "Did it work?" Threx's voice crackled through the intercom, a rare hint of hope lacing his words. "It's hard to tell," Lena replied, eyes glued to the data scrolling across her screen, "but there's definitely a fluctuation in its trajectory. Might not be much, but it's enough to give us a chance." "Good enough for me," Glip said, determination hardening his features. "Threx, prepare the engines. We're making a run for it, thrusters online," Threx confirmed. "Let's hope the afterburn doesn't cook us along with our newfound friends. Everyone hold on," Glip ordered, his grip on the console firm as a rock. "Let's see if we can outrun destiny." The Star Ark surged forward, engines roaring with all the power they could muster. The ship rattled and shook, like a dog shedding water, but it held together, urging itself free from Dumulus's gravitational grip. The monitor displayed Dumulus's shifting path, the squishes still doing their bizarre dance across its surface as the Star Ark sped away, leaving the rogue planet behind. "For now, looks like we're clear," Lena announced, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Nice work, everyone," Glip said, a rare note of genuine pride in his voice. "We've bought ourselves some time. Let's not waste it." The crew shared a moment of collective relief, tempered by the knowledge that their victory was tenuous at best. But for now, they'd done the impossible, using nothing more than a whole lot of moxie and a bunch of squishy blobs. Jasper leaned back, a satisfied grin on his face. "Who knew a bunch of jelly blobs could save our skins? Not me," Glip admitted, a hint of humor returning to his tone. "But I'll take unexpected allies wherever I can get them." As the Star Ark sailed further from Dumulus, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that their strange new adversary wouldn't be so easily deterred. But for now, they'd earned a moment of respite. And in the grand cosmic scheme of things, a moment was all they could ask for. "All right, crew," Glip said, focusing on the road ahead. "Let's keep moving. We've got a lot of space to cover, and not nearly enough time to enjoy the view." The Star Ark continued its voyage, the crew united by their shared brush with disaster and their determination to face whatever else the universe had in store. And despite the odds, there was a sense of camaraderie, a shared belief that no matter how grim things got, they'd face it together. After all, when you've got a crew like this, even a rogue planet doesn't stand a chance. The Star Ark barreled through space, engines roaring like an angry beast with indigestion, the crew's ragtag plan hanging by a thread as slender as Glip's patience. Dumulus loomed behind them, a cosmic predator with a pebble-sized brain and the temperament to match, still trailing ominously like an unwanted houseguest. Glip squinted at the monitor displaying Dumulus's trajectory. "So far, so good," he muttered, half to himself, half to the ship he supposed was listening. After all, in his experience, inanimate objects tended to develop personalities just about the time they started falling apart. Threx's voice crackled through the intercom, the sound like sandpaper on a bad day. "Engines are holding, Captain. We're burning more fuel than a pyromaniac at a bonfire, though. Might be a good time to start praying to the gods of efficiency." Jasper, lounging in his chair with a casualness that bordered on the absurd considering their circumstances, chimed in. "When this is over, I'm suggesting a redesign. Maybe a more fuel-efficient plan." Like I dunno, strapping rockets to a giant rubber duck. Hey, if this works, we'll have a blueprint for the next galactic crisis, Glip replied, adjusting his cap as if that might keep it from flying off his head in the rush of insanity that was their plan. Lena peered over her console, her fingers dancing over the keys like an overcaffeinated pianist. Captain, I've cross-referenced the ancient texts again. Turns out the prophecy of the Great Splat might have been misinterpreted. Surprise, surprise. Let me guess, Glip said. It's actually about baking pies or some other domestic nonsense. Close, Lena smirked. Apparently the Great Splat wasn't about an impact but a dispersion, something to do with spreading chaos to disrupt a larger threat. Jasper snorted. So we're not supposed to stop Dumulus, just confuse it. Sounds like my kind of strategy. Glip shook his head, a wry grin spreading across his face. So, we are destined to create a cosmic mess. Makes a strange amount of sense. All right, let's lean into it. The squishes had done their part, but the scrapbook of monstrous creatures aboard the Star Ark still had plenty to offer. If there was one thing Glip had learned from Earth's myths, it was that the weird stuff always had a trick up its sleeve. We need to get creative, Glip said, pacing the bridge with the energy of a caged tiger. Lena, research if any of our creatures can spew chaos on command. Threx, prepare for more than just engine thrust. We might need to jettison some of our more volatile cargo. Well, if we're planning on tossing out some volatile creatures, Jasper drawled, might as well do it with style. The Star Ark's beastly cargo was an assorted pandemonium of aggressive fur, fangs, and peculiar talents. As Glip and his crew began readying their plan, the creatures made their disapproval known with a cacophony of roars, hisses, and one very unsettling giggle from a creature known only as the Tickler. That one's all yours, Jasper, Glip said, nodding towards the Tickler's cage. You two seem to have a connection. Jasper gave an exaggerated sigh. Great. I've always wanted to bond with something that looks like a nightmare had a child with a vacuum cleaner. Threx entered the cargo hold, tool belt jangling like the night of an alternate universe where dungeons were replaced by malfunctioning engines. Captain, what's the plan? We releasing the whole zoo? Not quite, Glip replied. We need a spectacle, a distraction. Lena, any progress? Yes, Captain, she replied, scrolling through her data. The fire-breathing newts might help. Their flames can create optical distortions like a space mirage. Perfect, Glip said, his grin widening. Nothing says look over there like a bunch of fiery lizards. Threx nodded. I'll prep the bay. Who would have thought pyrotechnic salamanders would come in handy for planetary defense? Honestly, every Thursday before lunch, Jasper quipped, as he prepared the Tickler for its dubious mission. Let's get this show on the road. The Star Ark's cargo hold buzzed with chaotic energy as the creatures were rounded up and prepped for their unorthodox mission. The fire-breathing newts, jittery and exuding more smoke than a disgruntled dragon, were corralled into launch tubes. Engines ready, creatures loaded, Threx called, his voice laced with the grim determination of someone who'd resigned themselves to impending doom but wasn't about to go down quietly. Let's light up the sky, Glip commanded, his voice steady amidst the chaos. Jasper, get ready to unleash the Tickler. Lena, guide the newts to create the biggest damn distraction we can muster. Lena nodded, her fingers a blur across the controls. We've got one shot at this, so let's make it count. With a resonating hum, the Star Ark began jettisoning its peculiar payload. The fire-breathing newts shot out first, their flames creating a dazzling display of light and smoke, turning the void of space into a chaotic art installation. Beautiful, Jasper remarked, watching the fiery dance unfold on the monitor. It's like watching fireworks through a kaleidoscope with a concussion. Let's hope Dumulus finds it just as distracting, Glip said, watching as the rogue planet hesitated, its trajectory twitching in apparent confusion. The Tickler, meanwhile, was released into space, its bizarre giggles echoing through the ship as it floated towards Dumulus. Its peculiar energy was an uncharted variable, But if there was one thing Glip had learned, it was that unpredictability was often their best weapon. "Look at it go," Threx marveled, shaking his head. "Never thought I'd see the day when a cosmic prankster would be our last line of defense." As the tickler collided with Dumulus, there was a split-second pause, a breathless moment suspended in the silence of space, before the rogue planet shuddered, its path veering further off course. "It's working," Lena exclaimed, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Dumulus's trajectory is shifting." "We're actually doing it. Don't jinx it," Glip warned, though his grin was impossible to suppress. "Let's get the arc clear before it changes its mind." The star arc surged forward, leaving behind the chaos it had unleashed, Dumulus now wobbling uncertainly thanks to an army of improbable allies. "Engines to full," Glip ordered, his voice a mix of triumph and relief. "Let's put some distance between us and that rock with a grudge." The ship responded, powering forward as if it too understood the gravity of their victory. Dumulus, now offset by their gambit, faded into the backdrop of space, its threat diminished but not entirely gone. As the crew caught their breath, the mood shifted from adrenaline-fueled urgency to a more contemplative relief. They had gambled with the universe, and against all odds they'd walked away with their lives. Jasper leaned back, arms behind his head, a satisfied smile playing across his lips. "Hell of a day, huh? I've had worse Thursdays, but not many." "Let's not make a habit of this," Threx said, though the corner of his mouth twitched upwards. "I'd like my future crises to involve less improvisation and fewer squishy diversions." Lena chuckled, closing her data with a flourish. "You've got to admit, though, it was a pretty spectacular mess." "True," Glip conceded, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "And we learned something important today. Prophecies are just as confused as the people who read them." Jasper nodded sagely. "Next time, we consult a magic 8-ball. Probably just as accurate." As the star arc sailed on, the crew settled into a weary camaraderie, united by their shared brush with disaster and their victory against the odds. They'd faced Dumulus, and though the threat wasn't entirely vanquished, they'd proven that even the most improbable plans could succeed with a little ingenuity and a healthy dose of madness. "All right, crew," Glip said, his tone both commanding and affectionate. "Let's get back to work. We've got a galaxy to cross and a ship full of surprises." With a shared understanding and renewed respect for the unpredictability of space, the star arc continued its journey, proving once again that sometimes the greatest weapon against impending doom was a rogue planet's match in chaotic creativity. Captain Glip Globber stood on the bridge of the star arc, a ship he was fairly certain would fall apart if you glared at it hard enough, feeling an odd mix of triumph and disbelief. They'd done the impossible. They'd outwitted Dumulus, the cosmic predator with the personality of a bad hangover. And they'd done it with nothing more than a collection of bizarre creatures, and a plan that made jury-rigging a spacesuit with duct tape seem like a sound engineering practice. "Well, folks," Glip began, turning to address his crew with the gravitas of a man who just watched a miracle unfold, "I believe this calls for a celebration. Or at least a stiff drink. Preferably both," Jasper chimed in from his seat, where he was making a concerted effort to look as relaxed as a man who hadn't just thrown a cosmic tantrum with a rogue planet. "I'm thinking something that burns on the way down." Threx, who was leaning against a console with the air of a man trying to remember what it felt like not to be on the brink of annihilation, grinned. "As long as it doesn't explode, I'm in. We've had enough of that for one day." "Exploding beverages aside," Lena added, her fingers still dancing over her data pad as she wound down from the adrenaline high of their narrow escape, "I'd say we've earned a moment of peace, or at least a moment to catch our breath before the next disaster." "Peace," Glip scoffed, though there was a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I've heard rumors about it, but I'm pretty sure it's just one of those myths like Bigfoot or universally compatible charging cables." The crew shared a laugh, the sound echoing in the still tense air of the bridge. Moments of levity were rare out here in the vast, uncaring expanse of space, and they cherished each one like a lifeline. Meanwhile, down in the cargo hold, the Star Ark's motley collection of alien creatures was stirring in their cages. They'd been hauled across the galaxy, subjected to the whims of humanity's strangest plans, and now, somehow, they'd played a part in saving the ship. The fire-breathing newts, looking a bit more smug than lizards had any right to, basked in the afterglow of their fiery spectacle. Even the tickler, returned from its brief jaunt into space, was humming an unsettling but oddly triumphant tune. Glip strolled down to the cargo hold, greeted by a symphony of growls, chirps, and one particularly loud belch from a creature that resembled a cross between a walrus and a garden hose. The creatures regarded him with something approaching respect, or at least the kind of respect you'd offer someone who might feed you or toss you into space, depending on the day. "All right, you lot," Glip said, addressing the assembled menagerie like a circus ringleader on a budget. "I have to admit, I didn't expect to rely on you for our grand escape plan. But you pulled through, and for that, you've earned a reprieve from today's particular brand of insanity." The tickler gave a giggle that seemed more approving than malevolent, its vacuum cleaner eyes blinking in what Glip hoped was a sign of camaraderie rather than hunger. The fire-breathing newts, seemingly pleased with their role as cosmic fireworks, puffed small clouds of smoke in what might have been applause or perhaps just indigestion. Back on the bridge, the crew had settled into a kind of comfortable chaos, scanning the star-filled void for any hint of pursuit or impending doom. Luckily, all they found was an unsettling quiet that promised nothing, but hinted at everything. "So, Lena," Glip said, leaning against a console with the weary satisfaction of a man who just watched his unlikely plan come together, "what's next on the agenda of doom avoidance? More ancient texts to decipher, or are we done playing cosmic librarian for the day?" "Well, Captain," Lena replied, her eyes glued to a screen that displayed a jumble of old prophecies and equally old grammar mistakes, "I think we've exhausted our current supply of veiled threats and hastily scribbled warnings. But I'll keep an eye out for anything else that might decide to take a sudden interest in our little corner of the galaxy." "What about Doomulus?" Threx asked, still sounding like he expected the rogue planet to come crashing back into their lives at any moment. "Are we sure it's gone for good, or is it just off sulking somewhere in space?" Glip shrugged, a gesture that seemed to encompass the entire unpredictable universe. "For now, it's off our radar, but we've tangoed with it once and I'd rather not make a habit of it. We'll keep our wits about us and our fingers crossed." Jasper leaned back in his seat, looking as smug as a man who just outwitted the universe's biggest bully. "You know, if we survive long enough, I'm thinking of writing a guidebook. How to irritate rogue planets and influence cosmic events could be a bestseller. Put me down for a copy," Threx said with a grin. "It's about time someone wrote the definitive guide to surviving space, chaos, and bad ideas." The Star Ark cruised through the void, the hum of its engines a comforting reminder that they were still moving forward, still alive despite the odds. The threat of Doomulus had been averted, at least for now, and in its wake, the crew found themselves reveling in the simple joy of survival. As the Star Ark sailed on, the crew gathered in the modest mess hall, a room more suited to cafeteria brawls than celebratory feasts, but it was the only place they had, and they were determined to make the best of it. They raised what passed for drinks in interstellar terms, somewhere between fuel-grade ethanol and boot polish, and toasted their unlikely victory. "To the tickler," Glip began, raising his mug with a mixture of pride and disbelief, "for proving that sometimes the weirdest solutions are the best ones. And to the rest of our cargo for their unknowing contribution. To chaos," Lena added, her drink sloshing dangerously close to the edge of her cup, "and the beauty of not having a clue what you're doing but making it work anyway. Here's to unpredictability," Threx joined in, "which, as it turns out, is the most reliable thing we've got." Jasper, always ready with a quip, leaned back and grinned. and to us for turning a cosmic disaster into a delightful Tuesday. They clinked their mugs together, the sound a rare melody in the harsh environment of space. For a moment, they allowed themselves to relax, to forget the ever-present threat of extinction that hung over their heads like a petulant storm cloud. As the evening wore on, the conversation turned to lighter topics, gripes about engine maintenance, the strange quirks of their alien cargo, and the bizarre foods they'd encountered across the galaxy. It was a momentary reprieve from the constant uncertainty, a chance to revel in the absurdity of their lives. "Do you think," Lena mused, swirling the last dregs of her drink, "that Dumulus will ever come back? Or did we confuse it enough to give it a lasting headache?" Glip considered the question, his expression thoughtful. "If it does, we'll be ready. We've got more than enough chaos to throw at it, and I have a feeling our collection of oddities still has a few surprises in store." "Surprises," Threx repeated, his tone half amused, half exasperated. "If there's one thing we've learned, it's that surprises are the only thing you can count on out here." The crew nodded in agreement, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they'd faced down a cosmic menace and lived to tell the tale. They'd outsmarted Dumulus, thrown the universe's expectations into disarray, and proved that sometimes the best way to survive was to embrace the madness. As the Star Ark continued its journey through the stars, the crew settled into a comfortable routine, their camaraderie strengthened by adversity, and their bond as mismatched as it was unbreakable. They were a ragtag team of survivors, navigating the chaos of the galaxy with nothing more than a few good jokes and a shared sense of defiance. In the days that followed, the ship hummed with the usual activity: engine repairs, creature care, and the constant search for new ways to avoid cosmic calamities. The crew bickered, laughed, and plotted their way through the stars, each day a testament to their resilience and their refusal to go quietly into the void. And though the threat of Dumulus had faded into the background, its shadow no longer looming over them, the crew knew that the universe was full of surprises. They faced each new challenge with a grin and a quip, their spirits unbroken and their determination unshakable. In the end, they were just a ragtag group of humans and their unlikely allies, carving out a place for themselves in a universe that seemed hell-bent on their destruction. But as long as they had each other, and a ship full of chaos waiting to be unleashed, they figured they had a fighting chance.